Hello, Hedi. Do you want to start reading some parts of your book first? Or do you want?
I'm told that I should start reading in German and then mysteriously go on to English. I always do what I'm told. So I will do that. Okay, so the book is called The Day the Music Changed. And you will hear at the end of the reading why that is the title of the book. So I'm going to start reading it in German, and it has a picture of me when I was 4 years old, and that's when the story starts. So, I put my glasses on again. Ein Tag kann alles verändern. Oder anders ausgedrückt, an einem einzigen Tag kann sich alles ändern. Die Geschichte, die ich erzählen werde, handelt von Tagen, an denen etwas geschah, das mein Leben veränderte. Und ich fange an, als ich 4 Jahre alt war. Eines Tages in Österreich, als ich 4 Jahre alt war, ging ich mit meinem Vater spazieren. Mein Vater war eine besondere Art von Anwalt. Er verteidigte Leute, die in Schwierigkeiten waren, aber nicht viel Geld haben. Es war 1933. Hitler war gerade der Führer von Deutschland geworden. Wir waren gerade auf dem Heimweg, als ein Mann, der meinen Vater Geld schuldete, uns anhielt und schrie: Einen dreckigen Juden werde ich nicht bezahlen. Und dann spuckte er auf meinen Vater und lief davon. Ich weinte und mein Vater versuchte mich zu trösten. Er erklärte mir, dass Juden nicht dreckig sind und dass einige Leute gibt, die Juden nicht gern haben. Und die heißen Nazis. Und was sie machen, war Antisemitismus. Antisemitismus? Ein neues Wort für mich. Aber ich habe verstanden, was es meint. Es meint, dass Leute mich nicht gern haben, weil ich Jude bin. Wir leben in Schwechat bei Wien, die Hauptstadt von Österreich natürlich. Und Österreich ist ganz anders als England. Wir sind eine ganz normale Familie gewesen, nicht sehr wohlhabend, weil mein Vater nicht immer pünktlich bezahlt wird. Aber wir sind nicht arm, wir haben ein gemütliches Zusammenhaus. Wir haben gutes Essen, warme Kleider im Winter. Wir waren zufrieden. Ich bin ein Enkelkind, aber das macht mir nichts aus, weil ich einen Cousin habe und den haben wir Bubi genannt. Wir nennen ihn Bubi auch, als er schon ein großer Bub war. Aber er war so lieb und es stört ihn nicht. Er war so wie ein älterer Bruder für mich, mehr als ein Cousin. Wir haben alles zusammen gemacht. Wir haben zusammen gelernt schwimmen und wir haben zusammen gelernt Eislaufen. Und wir haben beide sehr gern gelesen und wir waren oft in der Bibliothek und wir haben im Park gespielt. Wir waren glückliche Kinder. Aber da war eines, und das war die Schule. Also ich habe mit 6,5 Jahren die Schule angefangen und den ersten Tag habe ich gelernt, was Antisemitismus fühlt, wie es das Gefühl ist, als was es heißt. Denn am ersten Tag haben mich viele Kinder dreckiger Jude gesagt und andere Sachen, schlechte, schlimme Sachen. Und Antisemitism und alle Racism fängt immer an mit schlimmen Worten. Und so war das. Und es war, dass ich fange an zu sprechen, als das zu lesen. Ich muss das lesen. Also es fängt mit Worten an. Auf Worte folgen bald Taten. Und niemand will mehr mit mir spielen, weil ich Jüdin bin. Und ich muss immer hinten in der Klasse sitzen oder stehen, weil ich Jüdin bin. Ich werde nie für etwas Schönes gewählt oder habe bekommen eine Rolle in einem Play. Wie sagt man das auf Deutsch? Ich weiß nicht mehr. Und ich war sehr unglücklich in der Schule. Und dann ist etwas sehr Schönes geschehen. Eines Tages verändert sich etwas. Ein kleines Mädchen namens Gerti kommt auf mich zu, als ich allein am Spielplatz stehe. Und sie sagt, willst du mit mir spielen? Und ich sage, ja. Und wir spielen. Und am nächsten Tag will Gerti wieder mit mir spielen. Und ich sage, ja. Und bald spielen wir jeden Tag miteinander. Und Gerti wird meine erste Freundin sein. Und eines Tages frage ich Gerti, warum spielst du eigentlich mit mir? Weißt du nicht, dass ich Jüdin bin? Und Gerti antwortet, meine Mutter hat mir gesagt, das spielt keine Rolle. Was Macht ist, was man ist keine Rolle, spielt keine Rolle, sondern sodann man ein guter Mensch sei. Und sie hat gesagt, ich muss nicht das tun, was die anderen tun. Ich muss das tun, was ich richtig finde. Ich habe Gerti und ihre Mutter schon immer für zwei der mutigsten Menschen gehalten, denen ich begegnet bin. Es ist nicht immer leicht, das Richtige zu tun. Für Gerti war es einfacher gewesen, so wie sie die anderen Kinder alle zu verhalten und so zu tun, als ob sie die schlimmen Dinge, die passieren, nicht bemerken würde. Denn als Gerti anfängt mit mir zu spielen, hören die anderen Kinder auf, mit ihr zu spielen. Und sie nennen sie dreckige Judenfreundin. And now I think I have to read in English, which will be much better.
You don't have to do anything.
No, do what I'm told. Always do what I'm told. Okay, so that was me at school, aged 6.5 to 8. I really was very unhappy at school. But I loved the work, but I hated going to school. In spite of Gertie, it was very, very hard for a Jewish child to be in school. And this was before the Anschluss. This was when words were said, bad words that really led to bad deeds. So that was what life was like for a Jewish child in Vienna in the late 1930s, before the Anschluss. And then the day that changed our lives happened, and that was March the 13th, 1938, becomes the one day that changed our lives forever. We are with our Christian neighbors listening to the radio, tense, wordless, in despair, certain that the Anschluss is about to happen. Anschluss, it's a German word, as you all know, to describe the joining together of Germany and Austria. Dr. Schuschnigg, the Austrian leader, is speaking. He tells us that he can no longer resist the pressures to unite with the Nazi Germany, pressures from within the country, from his own government, from the people. He will resign, and as soon as he has finished playing, the Austrian anthem will be played for the last time. He starts, he says, but halfway through the lovely Haydn melody, the tempo quickens. It becomes the German anthem. It is the same tune played at greater speed. And it is followed by public jubilation. We hear people cheering on the radio, and we hear them cheering in the street outside. Although I am still only 8 years old, I understand what is happening. I see Dr. Richter, my childhood idol, and I hear her elderly parents weeping and helpless. What will they do? Austria will never be the same again. How will they continue to lead their decent lives? And then I see my father, my tolerant and usually hopeful father, rise and strike his forehead and say in a terrible, trembling voice that I have never heard before, it is not a question of how we Jews will live, it is a question of our very existence. And my father was right. I was expelled from school almost immediately. My father's office was taken over by a Nazi lawyer. It was Aryanized. And we were turned out of our house and our home by a Nazi family before the end of the month. And eventually 17 members of our own close family were murdered in the Holocaust. I will never hear or see the word existence again in English or in German without hearing and seeing my father forever in that room striking his forehead. So that was the day that changed our lives. And it was followed by days of fear. Overnight we become fugitives. We remain indoors. We no longer have a human home and and we stay wherever we can with anyone who can put us up for a week, a month, even just for a weekend. We no longer meet with friends or family in coffee houses. My parents do not go to the opera or play bridge and chess. And the anti-Semitic laws that are in force in Germany now become the law in Austria. I cannot use my new pair of skates because Jews are forbidden to use the ice rink. We are also forbidden to use libraries or swimming pools. We are forbidden to go to the cinema or theatre or to play in public parks or even to sit on a public bench. My father is regularly woken up in the middle of the night and taken outside in his nightclothes to scrub the pavement and clean the public lavatories, and very often with a toothbrush. We never know when or whether he will be allowed to come home. And one night he is told to paint "Dirty Jew" in white paint on a Jewish shop window. And when he refuses, a former client, now wearing the brown Nazi uniform, quietly removes my father from the scene and brings him home and apologizes to my mother for what is happening. And she tells him he is brave. And I learn that there are good people even in the worst of days. Our Christian neighbors are good and brave. When I have a minor accident, Dr. Richter, our neighbor, takes me to the hospital where she is known, but where Jews are no longer allowed to go. She risks her job and severe punishment. She tells them that I am Elfie Binks and that I am a relative. And when I wake from the anesthetic, I have to remember that my name is Elfie Binks. And I do. And my beloved Dr. Richter survives the war and visits us in England when it is over. She believes that both parents died of shame about what Austria had become. Now we never know what happens next, and we are very afraid. Thank you. That's as much as I'm going to read. You can read it in the book.
Thank you very much, Hedi, for your reading. It was brilliantly done in both languages. Thank you, Your Excellence, for this wonderful event today, that we can be here in this British Embassy, and you represent the state, a country which was taking off many refugees Jewish refugees from Germany and from Austria in 1938 and 1939. Hedi, the first question I really want to ask is, you wrote your book in both editions in a very easy language, easy to read, easy to understand. Why did you do that?
Because the book is really written for children. It's written for children aged between, maybe 9 and 14, because it is children who are going to be the next generation and the generation after that. And it is children who need to know, and who need to know how this can happen. You know, it happened so slowly it built up and up and up, and then it was there. And, you know, we all know that there are signs today of similar things happening. And we have to teach children what it's all about. So that's why I wrote the book. And I was really very, very touched when Nicholas helped so much to have it published in English, because in German, because that's where it belongs. The book really belongs here more than anywhere else.
Yes, that's a very good point, because it refers to our first meeting. Because all our history starts around 6 years ago, I think, 7 years ago. And you mentioned a name. One of the only friend you had in the primary school was Gerti. And Gerti now sits in the front row here.
Can we all clap that?
And Gerti is responsible, mostly responsible for that we became friends. Because she is my great-grand cousin, I think. I always call her Auntie Gerti. And when my friends and me, which are also here today, decided to make historical documentary about Nazi time in Austria, Nazi time in our hometown Schwechat, Gerti was my first interview partner. And when we talked about the war and all these days when she was a very young girl, one of the first stories she told me was about Hedi, and I was very surprised, because I know Gerti all my life long, and I never heard the story of Hedi and her. And so we did the interview and had a lot of meetings, and then the idea raised up, so we have to get in contact with Hedi. And then the Mauthausen Memorial put us in contact, because Hedi had some contacts with the Jewish welcome services, I guess.
Yeah, and Bubi finished up at Mauthausen. Well, he finished up at Gunskirchen,
Yes.
Which was a sub-camp of Mauthausen. But so I had my details recorded in Mauthausen, so that's how you found me.
That's because she was known to Mauthausen Memorial, and so when we get in contact with people there, which we knew from other projects, it was quite easy to get in contact with Hedi. And then we wrote some emails, and then we said, okay, let's do an interview, and we came to London. And when you first met us, you were very friendly, of course, very polite, and then you let us into your living room, and then we had tea and coffee, and we always spoke English, which is not so usual for us, because we never talk English in our normal life, and then we had very severe, serious themes to talk about. And finally Hedi said, well, wir können das auch auf Deutsch machen, wenn ihr wollt. So a very trustful friendship began, and we had a wonderful interview, and it's a very important part of the film. And our relation went on, and the next project we had together was a memorial plaque for your cousin, Daniel Teller, Ubi, who found his death in Gunskirchen a few days after the war. He survived the war, he survived the camp, and he died in an hospital in Wales and was buried in a mass grave. And although there is some kind of plaque which names on it and of people who lie there, his name wasn't on this plaque. And
but it was spelled wrong, wasn't
it?
Then
we found out it was spelled completely wrong. And so we managed to make a very small memorial plaque, a very decent memorial plaque. And this was the next time you visited Austria when we put this plaque in the cemetery, and afterwards we had dinner, and so the friendship grows and grows, and we visit Hedi once a year, mostly in May or June and July, and so this friendship goes on and on, and then came your book. And then my next question, Hedi, why did it take so long time for you to write this book?
Well, I think it took a long time for me to start speaking about this. I was certainly in my 70s, I think, when I started speaking about what happened to, when I spoke officially, when I spoke to children at school. And it was from then I thought I'd better write it down. So that's what I did. And then that wasn't enough, because really what it needs was translation into German. And that's where Nicky and his 4 friends came along. And they're all sitting there, and I love them all. And I must tell you that they have reconciled me with my country of birth.
Thank you for that, Hedi. When we started talking about the book in German, it was clear it should be for children, it should be for pupils, and then we found a publisher, and it took almost 2 years, but Horst Horvath and his edition, Lexlis 12 and Elke Steiner did a very good job, and I'm extremely grateful that this book is now available in Austrian bookshops and in German bookshops, and I hope it will be sold very often. And
I hope it will be in schools.
That's the next thing I wanted to say, is that we all have to put much emphasis to bring it in schools, in Austrian schools. And I think we will have to take in contact with Bildungsdirektionen and so on to bring it in schools. In these days, we remember 87 years ago there was the so-called November pogroms started on the 9th of November. There is a certain story how this was for you and for your parents. Can you tell us the story?
Yeah. Well, on the 9th of November 1938, my mother and I were in a flat that didn't belong to us. We were kind of squatting, I suppose. It was a flat that was left by another lawyer, and we had the keys, and we just stayed there for some time. And on the 9th of September 1938, my father was not there because he was in prison. And he was in prison because he had defended somebody. He was no longer working by himself. I mean, his kanzlei, his bureau, was taken away by, as I think was in the book, by a Nazi lawyer. But he was allowed to work as an assistant lawyer, which is what he did. And he was sent to court to defend this person who was a communist, because he had forged a passport in order to escape the country and the regime. And my father said in open court that in a country that persecutes you for who you are, rather than penalizes you for what you do, then forgery to escape persecution could hardly be called a crime. He was arrested and he was sentenced to 6 years in the Rossauerländer, which is the big prison in Vienna. And he was due out on the 9th of November 1938. And so my mother went to the prison, and he didn't come out, and he didn't come out. And she finally came home without my father. And then we heard this eerie sound. I mean, we didn't know what it was. It was a sound like one had never heard before. And we went to the window. We were quite high up, second or third floor, I can't remember, but we were high up so we could look out over Vienna. And we went to the window and we could see flames in various parts of Vienna. And we could smell the smoke when we opened the window. And then we realized that the sound was of shattering glass. And we really didn't know what was happening, but then the phone started ringing because friends, family knew we were alone. Then they rang and they said, "Has your husband come home? Is he home?" Well, no, he wasn't. "Things are happening. Jews are being arrested in the street. Our windows are being smashed. Synagogues are being put on fire. Lock your doors." And we locked our doors. And we held each other and we stayed in. And no father. And no father the next day. And no father on the second day. But on the third day, my father came home. He looked awful. I mean, smelled awful. But he had a story to tell. And the story was that in the Rossaarländer, there were many Jewish prisoners. And it was a game that happened every day. The Jews were lined up facing each other in 2 rows. And they were ordered to smack each other's faces until ordered to stop. And the prison guards, the wardens, sat around and clapped and laughed. And my father refused to do it. And a prison warder took him away, and he thought he was going to be punished, of course. But he wasn't punished. He was put in his cell and locked in. And this happened every day. And on the 9th of September 1938, when my father was due out, this warden came to him and said, "Herr Doctor, there are terrible things happening in the streets. If you go out now, you will be arrested again, or worse, I can hide you." And he did. It was some dreadful, dark, dank cellar. It was indescribable, my father said. And he had no food and he had no water, nothing. But he was saved. He came out of the prison after 3 days after Kristallnacht and came home. And this guy, this warden, was somebody else that my father had defended at some point, who had remembered. It was long before the Anschluss that he remembered my father, long before he joined the Nazi party. This warden was very much part of the Nazi party. But he remembered, and he saved us. And, I learned a great lesson about people being good or bad. And about Jews being very brave.
I think it's a very strong example for how much luck you must have had in these times to survive these times. And you and your parents survived, and luckily you came out by train. I do not want to tell the story because it's in the book. It's a very, very exciting story, a very exciting chapter. But then you came to England, and you were a little girl, and you tried to become a good English girl.
An English girl,
Yeah.
yes, that's all I wanted to become, an English girl.
How was it for your parents? Your father was a lawyer, your father was social democrat, your father was a former patriotic officer in the Royal Army in the First World War.
Yeah, indeed.
And a patriot of Austria, now he was in England. How it was for your parents?
It was hard for them, very hard. I mean, they remained in England the rest of their lives. They never came to Austria again, not even for a visit. And they could never get used to the difference. Everything was different. I mean, every single thing was different. Not just the language, but the way people behaved, the way they talked, the houses they lived in, the way they heated their house. I was absolutely terrified the first time I saw an open fire in England. I ran out of the house screaming, "Fire, fire," because, you know, who had seen an open fire? But that was for me as a child, but for them everything was different. They never really got used to the difference. They always remained refugees, and in their own way, the way they looked at themselves, they always remained outsiders. Never quite made it. For me it was different, quite different. I just loved the moment I came here. Everybody was my friend. It was just wonderful. All I wanted to do was to be an English girl, yes. Never made that.
I'm not sure. Maybe it's time to take a look at the audience. Anyone, maybe a question to Hedi? Don't be shy.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you. I'm extremely moved. I live in Austria. I was born in England, so I wouldn't say the story goes the other way around, but at least the journeys. I wanted to ask you two things that you mentioned. One was, you mentioned that friends of yours helped you reconcile with Austria, and then you mentioned that your parents never came back. I was wondering if you would share what helped you reconcile. I know much more people whose stories I've heard who were unable to come back to Vienna, and even when they come back, they feel a strong load.
One of my daughters is here today. She may not agree, I don't know, but I did always share my story with my children. They knew what had happened and where I had come from, and when they were, I don't know, quite young, we booked a holiday here for 3 weeks, and the last week was in the mountains, and I found it very, very hard to come back. In fact, we cut the holiday short by a week, didn't we? And we went home because I couldn't take it. And that was the first time. But as time went on, and I came again, but I don't think I was fully reconciled, really, until I met Nicholas and his friends, and that was the point where I thought, yes, you know, I can come here, it's okay.
It's a new generation, a new Austria, would you say?
Sorry?
That it's a new generation, a new Austria, would you It's a different Austria to the one you knew. Would you agree with that?
Yes. From the little I know of it, yes. Yes, I feel at ease. Yeah. But it is... I can only stress that it is really these 4 people that enabled me to do that.
Thank you.
There's a question here.
What can you possibly... Oh, I thought you were going to... I was going to say, what could you
wants to
possibly
ask a
ask?
Family connections. I would like to know if it was hard for you to get to know other refugees in England, or were you totally cut off?
Well, it wasn't that it was hard, it was that it was not the way we were. We finished up. My father was interned as an enemy alien because, you know, it was not known who was an enemy and who wasn't. But then he went into the British Army, into the Pioneer Corps, and we travelled all over the country to follow him because my mother could always get a job as a cook wherever we were. So we kind of just followed him around and didn't have a place. And then we finished up in the Midlands in England, and my parents settled down finally there after the war. And there were no other Jewish families in that area, so they felt very outsiders, and they remained there. And I don't think I met any other refugees, let alone or Jews even, where we were in the Midlands, until I started living in London, when I suddenly realised, you know, that there was this sort of community of people, and I'm part of it, and yeah.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you very much for your wonderful book. I really enjoyed reading it, thank you. And what I found astonishing is that you write this book for pupils, and you give an insight into your life, but then you come to present times in the end, and you make it very clear that you encourage them to ask refugees nowadays in their schools and so on. So can you share your views why this is so important for you when you write this book?
Well, I suppose two things. Are you all right, Gertie? Yeah. Yeah.
Excuse me.
No, fine. Yeah. 2 things. I think I've mentioned it already, because I think it is very important for young people, for children, to understand what it means. To say nasty words, you know, to call people names, and how words translate into actions. I think that's very important for children to learn. And I just wanted to write it down because I'm not going to be here forever. And I thought, you know, it was quite important maybe to write this down and for the book to be used. It isn't a book to be just read, it's a book to be used in schools. That's really what it's about.
Anybody else? Then maybe my last question. We can have some small talk afterwards, I think, so it's no problem that we stop the interview now, but my last question would be, as you said, it's made for the schools. Yeah? Would you be content that this would be part of some workshops and some part of special education, Or do you more think it should be quite normally to confront pupils with all these themes in the general education?
Yes, I think so. I think, I don't know what it's called here, but in England it is called Holocaust education, and it is part of the syllabus of every primary school. It is for all, what are the children, 9 to 13-year-olds, it is compulsory education in England. And this book, you know, can become part of it, or has become part of it in many areas. And I just hope it will be here, because this is where it belongs, you know, it's got to come home.
So if there are no further questions, I would like to thank Your Excellency.
Can I just say a few final words?
Yes, please.
Thank you. You know that thing where I never stop talking? I'm not going to have the last words because they must remain with you, Hedi. But I did just want to say an enormous thank you. And thank you for 3 things in particular. No, maybe 4, because you brought Gertie along as well. This is great. I would like to thank you for, number 1, bringing your story home. Not just physically to Vienna, but I think so powerfully back into the German language. My goodness me, when I heard you reading from the book in German, that was the 6.5-year-old Hedi speaking. It was extraordinary. I've actually got goosebumps. How powerful that it is in German. And if I'm ever allowed to have a copy, my goodness, I'd like the German one. So thank you to you 4 heroes in the second row who helped make that happen. My goodness me, by doing that, you've done something extraordinary. I think number 2 is to thank you for making history something that everybody in this room felt. I was very struck when you were reading, when you first heard the word antisemitism, and the difference about feeling the word when you went to school. And I guess we all intellectually know the history. We've heard of people having to scrub streets with toothbrushes. We know there was the shattering of glass and the fires on Kristallnacht. But again, the privilege to hear that as first-hand testimony, not just a history, but a lived experience, is just extraordinarily humbling. So thank you.
Thank you.
And finally, I think we went back to that last question. You said 2 or 3 maybe really universal truths. That othering, the othering of people in our societies, whether that be through race, religion, ethnicity, whatever it might be, always begins with bad words. You then said that bad words invariably lead to bad deeds. But that optimism, that there will always be good people in the worst of times, it just means that all of us today, if we take away one thing, we can resolve to be good people in difficult times. And thank you, really sincerely. You've been so generous with your time. Thank you.